A few days ago, I made a video about this article titled Blizzard Manager Departs in Protest of Employee Ranking System from Bloomberg that detailed something that happened to one Brian Birmingham, former co-lead developer of World of Warcraft Classic. He was recently fired from Blizzard because he refused to partake in what's called a stack ranking system that was implemented back in 2021. It essentially involves managers being forced to give roughly 5% of employees a poor grade. And that's even if everyone happened to perform to standard. Even if everyone did well, 5% of those employees have to be screwed over and be given an artificially lower grade to meet corporate quotas. And that is something that Brian Birmingham wasn't willing to stand by, because employees who are given poor evaluations, they essentially have a lower chance of being promoted or getting raises. And it also means they get less bonus money. So Brian demanded that this requirement be revoked because, quote, it encourages competition between employees, sabotage of one another's work, a desire for people to find low-performing teams that they can be the best-performing worker on, and ultimately erodes trust and destroys creativity. If this system is rigged against employees where it's not about doing their best work and collaborating, then it becomes about gaming the system by screwing other people. That's kind of the kind of work environment that this kind of ranking system fosters. And so Brian was trying to get that revoked. He phrased it best when he said the following in an email that he sent to staff: even if that's legal, it certainly isn't ethical, and I cannot support it. So Brian decided that he would contemplate resigning and that he would not work until the stack ranking system was revoked. And because he refused to work, Activision Blizzard decided to promptly fire him instead of trying to meet him halfway. This is a true leader right here, someone who stands for both the integrity of the work that they're doing and the right treatment of employees who don't deserve to get shafted because of corporate quotas, employees who've been performing well, who Brian was being forced to give a poor evaluation and essentially ruin their prospects at climbing the ladder. Now, initially, we only heard about this from Bloomberg, who reported on this after, I guess, someone within Activision Blizzard leaked this information to Bloomberg, deeming this information that needs to get out there. But Brian Birmingham has also recently come out and essentially spoken out and clarified this whole situation, explaining from his perspective what happened. This was published on January 23rd, 2023, and I'm essentially going to read through this thread and comment along the way. He goes out of his way to call out Activision and talk about what a bad influence Activision Blizzard King, the parent company, has been for Blizzard. So here's what Brian said: I wasn't intending to make this public, but apparently it's in the news already, so I'd at least like to set the record straight. I am no longer an employee of Blizzard Entertainment, though I would return if allowed to, so that I could fight the stack ranking policy from inside. Even under these unfortunate circumstances, Brian is still speaking out against what is a really piss-poor corporate practice that a number of companies have dissolved in the past. Like Microsoft got rid of it back in 2013, but I think there's some companies like Amazon that still employ this kind of thing, and it just breeds a toxic work environment where employees aren't encouraged to collaborate with each other, but rather compete against each other. The work environment becomes more Hell's Kitchen than Great British Baking Show. Brian continues with, I'm told the forced stack ranking policy is a directive that came from the ABK level above Mike Ybarra. Mike Ybarra is the head of Blizzard. He still answers to Activision Blizzard King, the corporate head, the parent company, and apparently this went even above Mike Ybarra. I don't know for sure, but I suspect it's true. Everybody at Blizzard I've spoken to about this, including my direct supervisors, expressed disappointment about this policy. Even people above Brian were not for this policy, but they also had to answer to Activision Blizzard King, who enforced this mandate. For those who don't know, ABK is the parent company formed when Activision Publishing expressed their interest in buying World of Warcraft from Vivendi in 2008. Blizzard's market value was enough that Activision Publishing could not buy it outright. Instead, they arranged to form a new company called Activision Blizzard, which would own Activision Publishing and Vivendi's games division, including Blizzard Entertainment. Vivendi had over 50% of the shares of Activision Blizzard at that time. In creating Activision Blizzard, they needed an executive, and Bobby Kotick, unfortunately, from Activision Publishing, was elected as the new CEO of Activision Blizzard. Mike Morhaime, still president of Blizzard at that time, and beloved executive at Blizzard, who many deem to be a paragon when it comes to both doing the creative process right and treating employees like human beings. Many veteran Blizzard employees will sing praises about Mike Morhaime, reported to Bobby Kotick's staff at Activision Blizzard. Bobby and an investor group staged a hostile takeover, meaning that they bought up more than 50% of Activision Blizzard shares. There's no actual violence in a hostile takeover, despite the name. I forget which year this happened, but it resulted in greater control that Activision Blizzard could exert over Blizzard itself, and then Activision Blizzard acquired King, becoming Activision Blizzard King, or ABK. ABK was then a parent company of 3 different companies that they owned: Activision Publishing, Blizzard Entertainment, King. And for gamers and fans of Blizzard games, it became noticeable that the more Activision Blizzard King exerted control over Blizzard, the more Blizzard deteriorated in terms of the creative process. We've seen the quality of Blizzard games just deteriorate over time. We've just seen Blizzard kind of get worse and worse from its golden days. Brian continues, if I recall correctly, the first year we were asked to meet a specific quota of developing ratings was in the 2020 valuations across the winter of 2020/2021. If I recall, this was also the first year they tried to unify the review/appraisal systems across all 3 child business units, which matches up with the timeline that Bloomberg presents when they said that in 2021, Blizzard implemented a stack ranking system. But apparently this wasn't Blizzard's decision. It was a mandate from above from Activision Blizzard King. They wanted to implement this across all 3 child business units. Activision Blizzard and King all had similar appraisal processes by this point, and Activision Blizzard King wanted to unify them into one. Presumably, this was the motivation for enforcing a 5% developing rating, developing being the label given to employees who are given a poorer rating, less than ideal performance review, which they might get even if they perform well, even if they perform to standards or above, just because of this corporate quota requirement to make it match in all 3 studios. I'm not defending this, only explaining. We at Blizzard pushed back hard in 2021, and I truly believed we had reversed the developing quota policy. When the sexual harassment lawsuit was revealed later that year, we saw some change following that as well, and it felt like we could make an impact on Activision Blizzard King policies, which matches up with Bloomberg's reporting that when Brian Birmingham wrote to staff about this whole situation, he had conveyed that he and other managers on the World of Warcraft team had been able to circumvent or skip filling the quota for the last 2 years, and that he believed the mandate had been dropped or wasn't strictly enforced. But unfortunately, he was wrong. Eventually, when it was much more strictly enforced and mandated, Brian refused to partake in that, and so he was ousted from the company. The way Brian details all of this is that the realization that there's still a minimum quota for developing, despite our objections and sternly worded letters, leads me to believe that I was under an illusion. I was operating under an illusion. I hope Blizzard's positive culture can overcome Activision Blizzard King's poison, but it isn't succeeding in doing that yet. Straight up right here, until recently, a senior developer at Blizzard calls out Activision Blizzard King as being a poison to the work culture at the company. Poison that unfortunately Blizzard hasn't been able to fight back against, because ultimately they are just a subsidiary of Activision Blizzard King. The parent company ultimately makes all the decisions. There's nothing they can do about shitty corporate mandates that will impact Blizzard, even if Blizzard disagrees with that direction. Brian continues, so having explained all that, I bear no ill will toward my former colleagues at Blizzard Entertainment. The Blizzard I knew and always wanted to work for is being torn apart by the executives at Activision Blizzard King, and it makes me sad. I truly respect the developers I worked with at Blizzard. We have seen a lot of investigative journalism reporting based on sources the way corporate influence seeping into Blizzard from Activision Blizzard King has deteriorated the work culture and the creative process at Blizzard, but right here we're hearing it straight from Brian, who again was a former senior developer for World of Warcraft Classic, who has no reservations about making this public and, not doing this under anonymity. He's just, as Brian Birmingham, putting it out there that Activision Blizzard King sucks, that the executives at that company, at the parent company, suck and are sucking the life out of Blizzard and are poisoning Blizzard. And Brian doesn't stop there. I will still play Blizzard games. The developers at Blizzard are still amazing, but Activision Blizzard King is a problematic parent company. They put us under pressure to deliver both expansions early. So right there is a direct call out against Activision Blizzard in regards to their game release scheduling practices that leads to rush products, hence why we've been seeing Blizzard games deteriorate in quality, because Activision Blizzard King, the parent company, refuses to give the projects that Blizzard are working on the necessary time to be fully fleshed out, the necessary time to ensure that they release in the best state possible and meet the once gold standards that Blizzard stood by when it comes to game releases. It is deeply unjust to follow that by depriving employees who worked on them their fair share of profit. The Activision Blizzard King team should be ashamed of themselves. So not only is the parent company putting developers under conditions in which they are less likely to succeed, even if they do succeed, even when managers who have watched these employees work vouch for them, even when employees gave everything they had under really shitty circumstances set by Activision Blizzard wants to take more. Everything is not good enough. Regardless of how hard you worked and how well you did, you unfortunately drew the short straw. 5% of employees have to be given poor evaluations because we said so. So boom, here you go, employee who does not deserve to get punished and who did a good job. We're taking away your bonuses and prospects for raises and promotions. Leadership makes decisions that leads to product suffering. Meanwhile, employees are performing well, but it's the employees who have to suffer for it. Leadership, meanwhile, they get to sit on their ivory tower. Now, Brian makes it a point to highlight that I must stress that the above is my best recollection of events. It covers a lot of years, and human memory is notoriously imperfect. I do believe that the broad strokes are accurate. The developing quota is toxic, the stack ranking system and all of that. It is an ABK, Activision Blizzard King policy, not specifically a Blizzard policy that they implemented by choice. The parent company mandated it. It is being forced on Blizzard. I can't tell you whether to boycott Blizzard games or not. How best to express your displeasure is up to you. As I said above, I won't boycott, but I can't participate in a policy that lets Activision Blizzard King steal money from deserving employees, and I can't be made to lie about it either. Bloomberg reports that in an email to employees, Brian Birmingham disclosed to employees that we were asked to keep it confidential because it was an ongoing discussion, and we don't want Activision executives to make things even worse. Brian decided, I'm not going to keep quiet about this, and I'm not going to lie to employees about this either. Finally, he concludes, and to wrap up, I want to again clarify that I was surprised to see the Bloomberg article below. I did not provide them the email they're quoting from, but I believe the quotes are accurate, so he's corroborating Bloomberg's report. They have neither spoken to me nor reached out to me in any way. Maybe Bloomberg should reach out to Brian and get more direct quotes and more direct testimonials, but he does seem to be corroborating Bloomberg's article. He doesn't really seem to be calling out any inaccuracies, and by his own account, Activision Blizzard King seems to be the one responsible for this policy. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Brian has my deepest respects for standing up for what's right and for sacrificing a job that he loved in order to not abide by corporate mandates that would hurt the human beings who are depending on him. Not only did he protest internally, but after the article came out, he decided to disclose even more information and just straight up call out Activision Blizzard King as the shitty publishing company that they are, and Bobby Kotick and executives like him for being just the worst. It's important to emphasize that these poor evaluations that employees are given, it doesn't just affect them in the present, it affects their future ability to get raises, bonuses, and promotions. Activision Blizzard King is willing to sacrifice people's livelihoods, essentially, for no real good reason. And they want all of their subsidiaries to partake in this stack ranking system that is just so unethical that I frankly don't know how it's even legal. And you can see down here in responses to Brian's Twitter thread, a number of Blizzard employees just expressing their respect for Brian and his integrity and just what a positive force he was for the World of Warcraft Classic team. Here's Kevin from Blizzard, software engineer on World of Warcraft, saying to all people saying, this Brian guy seems awesome. You'll probably never know just how correct you are. Couldn't be prouder of you for standing up for what's right, Brian. Here's Josh Greenfield, who is a game producer for World of Warcraft Classic, stating, thanks for everything you've done for our team, the Classic community, and thank you for taking a stand in this. Love you. Here is another employee, lead software engineer, World of Warcraft Classic. You made Classic be what it is now and transported millions of players back to a magical era. You've always put the team and players first, and I really admire that. Again, just a true leader, and many such responses and love being expressed to Ryan you'll find in this comment section that you can read through for yourself if you so desire. But you can see right here, Brian's a good man. Unlike the executives at Activision Blizzard King, Brian stood up for what's right, and hopefully his next ventures will be filled with greener pastures full of success, and hopefully he'll get to work for a company that actually respects human beings, that go in line with his own moral standings. Employees do their best work when they're happy and are rewarded for doing their best work, rather than feeling like their livelihoods are constantly at risk because of some shitty corporate system that encourages infighting rather than collaboration. So yeah, this is just worth highlighting. It's such a disgusting way of treating employees, and Activision Blizzard King executives who mandated this just deserve to be ousted from the company. Not Brian. It's the leaders, the incompetent and devious and straight up evil executives who should be getting kicked out. But unfortunately, they have too much power. But that's power that can easily be stripped away if Blizzard employees decide to come together and decide that enough is enough. And more employees are getting fed up. Eventually, there will be a straw that will break the camel's back. And there will be a reckoning if Activision Blizzard King continues with its shitty ways that just completely disregards the humane aspects of employment practices. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation with Brian Birmingham and what he had to say in this Twitter thread. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.